Before gods walked the sky, before man carved runes into stone, there was a serpent so vast it wraps around the world, so deadly its breath can end the life of a god, and so ancient that even time holds its breath when it stirs. This is no mere creature. This is Jörmungandr, the world serpent of Norse legend, born from chaos, raised in the depths, and fated to rise at the end of all things. Today, we dive deep into the myths, prophecies, and final battle that shook the roots of Yggdrasil itself, and we're taking you with us. But first, do you believe in mythic destiny? Hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video if you crave more stories from the edge of legend. And don't forget to enter our epic giveaway. A $100 Amazon gift card and the brand new Samsung S25 are up for grabs. Like the video, comment your favorite mythological creature, subscribe, and hit the bell now. Let the waves part, the sky crack, and the silence speak. This is the story of the World Serpent who will end the world and begin it again. Chapter 1. The birth of a monster in the vast tapestry of Norse myth. There are few tales as chilling, as primeval, as the story of Jörmungandr, the World Serpent. But to understand the beast, we must journey back to the beginning, before gods were kings, before fate was sealed, to the land of giants, to Jotunheim. Imagine a land where mountains scrape the sky and glaciers groan like sleeping titans. The wind there carries whispers older than language, and the ground trembles with the weight of ancient power. It is in this savage, untamed realm that a giantess lived, one unlike any other. Her name was Angrboda, the bringer of grief. She was not a creature of brute strength or mindless destruction. No, her power was deeper, older, subtle like poison in wine. Her eyes were storm clouds, and her heart pulsed with the rhythm of forgotten spells. It was this shadowed queen who caught the eye of Loki, the god of mischief. Loki, the shapeshifter. Loki, the betrayer. Loki, who danced between gods and giants like a flame in the wind. Their union was not born of love, but of fate, a destiny so dark that even the Norns who wove the threads of time turned away in fear. And from this unholy bond, 3 children were born. The first, a wolf, not just a wolf, Fenrir, a beast born howling, his fangs sharp as prophecy. Even as a pup, he radiated a terrifying presence. He would one day be feared by gods, for in his jaws they saw the end of days. The second, a girl, but not wholly human, not wholly alive. Hel. Half of her face shone with youth and beauty. The other half was pale, dead, decaying. A child who would rule over death itself. And then the third, the smallest, the quietest, the most mysterious, a serpent. He slithered into the world silently, eyes glowing, body cold, black as moonless ocean depths. He had no name then, but one would be given to him soon, Jörmungandr. From the very first moment, the gods sensed something was wrong. Odin himself, the All-Father, was plagued by visions. He saw storms rising, oceans boiling, skies torn asunder. The children of Loki would not merely be monsters. They would be catalysts, agents of Ragnarok, the doom of all things. So, the gods acted swiftly. Without mercy, they tricked Fenrir, binding the mighty wolf in unbreakable chains, forged from the impossible. They cast Hel down into the underworld to rule over the cold dead. But what of the serpent? Jörmungandr was small then, but even in that fragile form, Odin saw potential. Not for greatness, but for devastation. He held the creature in his hands, this little coil of living shadow, and felt it squirm, not in fear, but in ancient recognition. This serpent, Odin knew, was no mere child. It was a force. It would outgrow cages, outgrow spells. So he chose a different fate. He lifted the serpent high into the sky and hurled it into the deepest part of the sea that surrounded Midgard. Into the abyss, Jörmungandr fell, tumbling, spinning, sinking, down, 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 until there was no more light, no more sound, only the cold pressure of the ocean's black heart. There, in the bottomless deep, Jörmungandr began to grow. Years passed, decades, centuries. The serpent stretched its body through, currents and trenches feeding on whales, leviathans, and things no mortal eyes have seen. It grew longer than rivers, wider than valleys, stronger than any beast the gods had ever known. And still, it grew. Its body extended outward, further and further, like a living chain encircling the realm of mankind. Until, one day, it completed the circle. Its tail met its jaws, and it bit down, not in hunger but in ritual, a perfect Ouroboros, a symbol of infinity, of eternity, of destruction wrapped in balance. This was the day the world changed, and no one on the surface even noticed. Beneath the waves, Jörmungandr slumbered, but it did not sleep. Its eyes watched. Its mind listened. Its body moved with the tides, guiding storms, shaping coastlines, testing the edges of fate. The serpent had become more than monster. It was a boundary between worlds, between land and sea, chaos and order, beginning and end. And the gods knew. One day, the serpent would rise. One day, it would release its tail. And when it did, the world would break. For Jörmungandr was not merely a beast cast into exile. He was a prophecy incarnate. He was a child of grief, a creature of chaos, a herald of Ragnarok. And as the tide surged and the thunder rolled above Midgard, a question lingered beneath the ocean's black surface. Was this destiny or design? Because monsters are not always born. Sometimes they are made, and when the gods cast Jörmungandr away, they did not destroy the threat, they created it. Now, beneath the sea, he waits, coiled around the world like a ticking clock made of flesh and venom, and the moment he lets go, the countdown ends. Chapter 2. The symbol of the circle in the shadows of Midgard. There is a secret few understand, a symbol that holds power over life and death, chaos and order, the beginning and the end. This symbol is as old as the gods themselves. It is the circle. We know it today as the Ouroboros, the serpent devouring its own tail, a sign of eternal return, of cyclical time, of the balance between creation and destruction. But long before it became a symbol, it was a curse, a destiny. Jörmungandr did not merely form the Ouroboros because of his growing size. No, he didn't just coil around the earth to feed his hunger. His form, his shape, was something deeper than that. It was the shape of the end. The serpent, coiled so tightly, held the fate of Midgard within its grasp. The ocean roared as it turned, and in every ripple there was a story, every wave a prophecy. For Jörmungandr was not only a creature of flesh and venom, he was the keeper of balance, the tension between destruction and creation, between light and darkness. And it was this very tension that shaped the world. He had become the Earth's boundary. The moment he finished his circle, the world began to spin around him. He was no longer an exile, cast out to the deep. He was the world's anchor. Midgard could not move without him, nor could it rest without his vigil. From beneath the surface, Jörmungandr observed the creatures of the land, gods, mortals, beasts, and men, as they created, built, and wove their own tales. It was the gods, of course, who were most interesting, for it was the gods who had cast him into exile. It was they who had set his purpose in motion. The gods did not understand what they had done. They thought they could destroy him with chains. They thought that by casting him into the sea, they could contain him, but they underestimated the serpent's power. Jörmungandr's body, wrapped around the earth, became more than just a living creature. It became an idea, a boundary between two realms, the divine and the mortal. Midgard, the world of men, could never know peace, could never know balance, as long as the serpent coiled beneath its waters, a reminder of the chaos that lay just beyond reach. And the gods, they too were bound by the serpent, each of them tethered to this ancient creature in ways they could not yet understand. Thor, the mighty god of thunder, was particularly intrigued by the serpent. Perhaps it was his pride, perhaps it was his arrogance, but he could not resist challenging this unknown creature that lurked beneath the surface of the sea. Thor was the greatest of the gods, after all. He wielded Mjolnir, a hammer that could crush mountains, summon lightning, and destroy all who stood in his way. He was a god of strength, of valor, but there was something about Jörmungandr that even Thor could not ignore, something primordial, something beyond his own power. For years, Thor had heard whispers of the serpent's growing size, of its coils, stretching out, wrapping around the very world itself, and with each whisper he felt a stirring in his soul, a challenge. One day, Thor set sail across the seas, searching for the beast that the gods feared. He boarded a ship, armed with Mjolnir and a fierce determination, and sailed into the heart of the storm. The seas themselves seemed to recognize Thor. They churned and roared, waves crashing like thunder against the ship's hull. The air was thick with the scent of salt and ozone. And then, as if from the very depths of the ocean, a pair of glowing green eyes appeared, Jörmungandr. It was then that Thor saw the serpent in its true form. Its body stretched out farther than any horizon. It was so vast that its coils seemed to disappear into the distance, vanishing into the mist, and at its center, at the heart of the serpent, was Thor's greatest challenge yet. The serpent did not move. It did not stir. But its eyes, those glowing, ancient eyes, locked onto Thor with a gaze that seemed to pierce the very fabric of the world. Thor raised Mjolnir high and shouted his defiance to the heavens. The battle between the god and the serpent was not one of blows, but of forces. Thor's lightning clashed against the serpent's eternal patience. The god struck with all his might, but Jörmungandr did not falter. It merely watched, its tail coiling tighter, its gaze unwavering. In that moment, Thor understood. The serpent was not his enemy in the way he had expected. No, the serpent was fate itself, unyielding, timeless. The moment he fought the serpent, he realized he wasn't challenging a beast. He was challenging the very nature of time. Jörmungandr, in its infinite circle, represented the end of all things. And Thor, in his own arrogance, had thought he could conquer it. The serpent smiled silently, if it had a smile at all. For now, the battle was over. Thor returned to Asgard, but the serpent still lurked beneath the waves, a symbol of the unbreakable cycle of life and death. Because the serpent's power was not in its size, its venom, or its terrifying gaze. Its power lay in the circle it created, a circle that could never be undone. And in that circle, the gods would find their end. Jörmungandr had become more than a creature. He was the beginning of the end. As long as he remained coiled, there would be no peace, no victory, no finality, only the endless turn of time, the endless return. Chapter 3. The prophecy of Ragnarök as the ages passed. The gods in Asgard grew increasingly aware of the serpent's presence beneath the waves. They saw it not just as a creature, but as a living symbol, a symbol of something greater, something inevitable. For Jörmungandr was more than just a beast with fangs and venom. He was a sign, a harbinger of the end. This serpent, coiled so tightly around the earth, had a role far greater than that of mere guardian or monster. It was a key to an ancient prophecy, one known to the gods as Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, the final battle. The day the heavens would burn and the earth would tremble beneath the weight of fate. Odin, the All-Father, had seen it in his visions, the destruction, the blood, the death, and in the heart of it all he saw the serpent. Jörmungandr would be the one to strike the final blow. His tail would uncoil, and from his mouth would spew venom that would poison the very sky. The seas would rise, the world would crack, and in the end there would be nothing left but the echoes of a forgotten age. Ragnarök was coming, and all the gods, in their might and arrogance, could not escape the pull of destiny. For centuries they lived in denial. They fought wars, built kingdoms, and feasted in halls of gold. They raised heroes and created legends, but all the while they knew, deep in their bones, that this world, their world, would one day end. And when it did, the serpent would rise. But it was not just Jörmungandr who would play a part in this cataclysmic event. The prophecy of Ragnarök spoke of many other players, each of them bound to the fate of the gods. First, there was Fenrir, the great wolf, born of Loki and Angrboda. The wolf who would break free from his chains and hunt down the gods one by one, beginning with Odin himself. His teeth would tear through the heavens, and with each bite, he would take another piece of the world with him. The gods knew Fenrir's fury was inevitable, just as they knew Jörmungandr would rise from the sea. Then there was Hel, the ruler of the dead. Her domain, the underworld, would open, and the souls of the departed would rise up, joining in the chaos. They would march across the world, an unstoppable army led by the Queen of Death herself. And there were others. Surtur, the fire giant, whose flaming sword would scorch the earth. Loki, the trickster god, who would betray his own kin and lead the forces of chaos against Asgard. And the mighty Baldur, once a god of light and beauty, whose death would serve as the spark that ignited the flames of destruction. The gods, knowing what was to come, tried to prepare. They summoned warriors and heroes. They created powerful weapons and magic spells. They even tried to control fate itself. But no matter how they fought, the prophecy of Ragnarok was like an unmovable stone, waiting for the right moment to fall. But amid all this preparation, there was one thing the gods did not fully understand. They did not understand the serpent's role. Jörmungandr, coiled beneath the waves, was not just waiting for Ragnarok to come. No. He was more than a mere instrument of destruction. The serpent was the keeper of time itself. The circle it created around the world was not just symbolic, it was a reflection of the cycle of life and death, a cycle that could not be broken. The moment Jörmungandr uncoiled, the world would begin. Its descent into chaos. The oceans would rise, swallowing entire realms. The sky would crack open, and fire would rain down from the heavens. The gods would fall, one by one, as the serpent's venom poisoned everything it touched. But what would happen after Ragnarok? After the gods had fallen and the world had burned? Would there be a new world, a new cycle, or would the serpent, having fulfilled its purpose, simply return to the depths and await the next era? These were the questions that haunted Odin in the years leading up to Ragnarok. He knew that he could not escape the fate that awaited him. He could not change the course of history. All he could do was prepare for the end and ensure that his sons, his warriors, and his people would fight bravely until the very end. Odin's greatest fear was not death itself, but the idea that the gods might fail, that they might be forgotten, that they would become nothing more than stories. Stories told around a fire as the world crumbled to ash. And so, as the world moved closer to its inevitable end, the gods made one final attempt to stop the prophecy from unfolding. They sought out the Norns, the three sisters who wove the threads of fate. They asked the Norns if there was any way to change the outcome of Ragnarok, if there was any way to rewrite the destiny of the gods. But the Norns, in their wisdom, looked upon the gods and gave them only one answer. Ragnarok is not to be stopped. It is not to be changed. It is a cycle that must be completed. The serpent will rise, the wolf will howl, the sky will burn, and the gods will fall. And so the gods understood. There was no escape. They had played their part in the grand tapestry of fate. The circle of time had turned, and now there was no turning back. Ragnarok would come, the serpent would rise, and the world would end. Jörmungandr. Beneath the waves waited Thor, Fenrir, Loki, Hel, Odin, all stood at the precipice. The wheel of fate was spinning, and there was no way to stop it. The serpent, in all its ancient wisdom, knew what would come. It knew the role it would play. It knew that in the end it would rise, unleashing chaos and fire. But it was not afraid. It was simply the end. Chapter 4. Thor and the Sea Beast. The sea was quiet. Too quiet. No wind stirred the sails. No gulls cried overhead. Even the waves, ever restless, lay still as if holding their breath. The silence was so deep it pressed against the chest, heavier than any armor. This was no ordinary voyage. It was a hunt. A god hunted a monster. Thor, son of Odin, had descended from Asgard to the realm of men. Not for glory, not for praise, but for something far more personal. He wanted to face the serpent. He wanted to look into the eyes of Jörmungandr and see if the prophecy was true. If the beast destined to kill him in the end could be faced now, before the world ended. Before fate had its say. With him was the giant Hymir, reluctant and grim. They sailed out from the edge of the known world, beyond the fjords, into the open sea where mortals dared not go. Thor wore the guise of a young man, his red beard tied, and tucked beneath a hood. Mjolnir, his mighty hammer, hung hidden beneath the deck. He did not want the serpent to see him coming. Not yet. As they drifted farther from shore, the sea darkened. It was not from the clouds. It was from something. Beneath, they baited a line with the head of a massive ox, the only bait large enough to lure what lay below. The blood seeped into the water like ink, spreading in tendrils into the deep. Thor gripped the line with hands like iron. He waited. Minutes passed, then an hour, then 2. The wind had still not returned. Then it came. A tug, a small one at first, then another sharper. Thor braced himself. The sea, flat and black as obsidian, suddenly exploded. A tower of water shot into the sky, and from its heart came the serpent, Jörmungandr. Coils like mountains burst from the deep, scales slick with sea foam, eyes glowing with ancient light. Thunder cracked overhead, though there were no clouds. The serpent's tongue flicked, sensing the god, and then it struck. Thor held fast, his arms bulging with divine strength, the fishing line cutting into his hands. The boat tipped. Harbinger screamed. The sky above seemed to tilt. Jörmungandr's head, the size of a longhouse, broke the surface, jaws wide. Venom dripped from its fangs like boiling tar. Its roar was a sound that had not been heard since the birth of the world, the scream of something primordial. Thor did not flinch. He stood. He leapt. Mjolnir flew into his hand as if summoned from another realm. With a single shout that echoed from Asgard to Hell, Thor brought down the hammer. The blow shattered the sky. Lightning cracked across the heavens. The serpent recoiled, hissing, coiling back. But Thor was already upon it, leaping from the boat, landing on one of its rising coils. Again he struck, and again. Thunder raged. The sea boiled. For a moment, just a moment, it looked as if the god might win. Jörmungandr reeled, bleeding, venom painting the water green and black. The serpent thrashed, and waves surged high enough to swamp distant islands. But the sea was its home, and Jörmungandr was far from beaten. With one enormous twist, the serpent snapped the fishing line. Thor was flung back into the boat, which shattered under the force. Harbinger cried out as he vanished into the waves, and the serpent rose, high above, its entire body lifting in, a curve that seemed to blot out the sky. From its open jaws, venom rained down like acid. Thor roared back, his hammer glowing with divine power, ready to throw again, but in that instant, the serpent vanished. Gone. As quickly as it had come, it returned to the deep. The sea fell still. Thor, panting, soaked in brine and blood, stood alone on a splintered plank of wood. His breath was fire in his lungs. His eyes scanned the water, but Jörmungandr was gone. Not dead, not defeated, simply waiting. Because the serpent knew what Thor did not yet accept. This was not the time. Their true battle was still to come. It could not be won today. The gods had their roles. The threads of fate were already woven, and this encounter, this was just a reminder, a warning. Thor was not immortal, and his destiny was not a throne of gold. It was the jaws of the beast. Back in Asgard, the other gods waited for Thor's return. When he finally arrived, drenched and silent, they asked him what he had seen. He said nothing. He merely walked past them, Mjolnir dragging behind him like a weight too heavy to bear. From that day on, he trained harder, drank deeper, laughed, louder. But inside, something had changed. He had seen the end. He had looked into the eyes of his killer and understood. This was not just a beast. It was a mirror, a reflection of all that the gods had become, their pride, their blindness, their doom. And so the days turned, and the stars moved, and the world spun within the serpent's coil, waiting for the day when Thor and Jörmungandr would meet again, and this time, only one would walk away. Chapter 5. The Venom and the Void. Beneath the crashing waves and the shadowed sea cliffs, there is a place where the light of day never reaches. A place where silence weighs heavier than stone, and the water itself seems to pulse with something ancient and alive. It is here, in the fathomless deep, that Jörmungandr waits. But the serpent does not sleep. It broods, and with each passing Age with each clash of gods and fall of men, its body stirs ever so slightly, shifting the tides, calling the storms. And in its veins, darker than ink and hotter than fire, flows a venom like none the worlds have ever known. This is no ordinary poison. This is the void. It is the lifeblood of chaos, the black substance that predates gods and stars. A poison not only of the body but of the soul, a venom that dissolves hope, unravels order, and turns even the bravest hearts to ice. When Jörmungandr coils in its silent prison, that venom pulses outward, not as a flood, but as a whisper. It seeps into the dreams of gods. It infects the roots of Yggdrasil, the world tree. It stains the rain that falls across Midgard, and though few know it, many have felt it. The madness that overtakes kings in their final years, the sudden chill in a child's laughter, the endless wars with no reason and no end. These are not always born of man's doing. Sometimes they are the serpent's dreams, spilled from its fangs and spread across the 9 realms, like a plague beneath the skin of reality. In ancient times, the Aesir spoke of the venom eclipse, a moment foretold in the runes, when Jörmungandr's breath would rise from the sea and darken the sky itself, not as a storm, but as a veil, a shroud of black vapor, thick with despair and corrosion, capable of dissolving the strongest of weapons, the oldest of magics. A breath so deadly that even gods could choke on it, and yet no one truly knew what the venom was, not even Odin. He had looked into the well of Mimir, he had torn out his eye for wisdom. But the venom, it was older than prophecy, older than the gods themselves. It came from before, from the Ginnunga gap, the yawning void that existed before time, before light, before the worlds were carved from ice and flame. And Jörmungandr, many believed, was not merely a creature born of that ancient chaos, but a piece of it, a sliver of the void, shaped into flesh and scale. And what is venom, if not the echo of something ancient trying to return? It is said that when Jörmungandr finally rises from the sea, not in rage but in inevitability, it will not come to conquer. It will come to restore the original silence, the first darkness, the stillness that came before gods gave names unto things. Its venom will not merely burn or blind, it will erase mountains, erase rivers, erase memories. It will reach into the minds of mortals and gods alike and turn courage into doubt, love into dust, and truth into silence. But there are those who believe that the venom has already begun to leak, that small traces have escaped the depths, curling into the corners of Midgard, into the forgotten forests, the haunted fjords, the breath of dying creatures. The venom, in its essence, is not just destruction, it is undoing. It is the unraveling of the threads the Norns have spun. It is entropy, madness, silence, and it is patient. Jörmungandr does not need to rise to begin the end. It only needs to wait. Some scholars whisper that this venom is conscious, that it learns, that it mimics the minds it touches, infecting not just blood, but will. It breeds confusion, contradiction, the slow decay of belief. The serpent's venom, they say, has already turned some gods against their kin, some mortals against themselves, and when Ragnarok comes, that venom will be everywhere. In the sky, in the sea, in the lungs of gods, in the last breaths of dying heroes. Thor himself will not fall from a blade or a broken bone, but from a single breath of Jörmungandr's poison. After he slays the beast, as the prophecy says, he will take 9 steps and then collapse, not from wounds, but from the venom coursing through him. That is the serpent's final victory, not the strike, not the roar, but the quiet after, a breath that ends everything. And yet, there is a strange beauty to the venom, because in it lies truth, not the truth of men or gods, but the truth of the universe. That all things must return to silence, that even glory has an end, that even stars burn out, that even gods must fall. Jörmungandr is not just a beast of myth, it is the end written into the beginning, the period at the end of the sentence, the final breath. So now, when the wind changes and the waters still, the wise ones listen. They feel it in their bones, the distant pull of something immense, not just the body of a serpent, but the slow, inevitable leak of nothingness, the venom and the void, 2 sides of the same truth. Jörmungandr does not rise today, but it dreams. And with every dream, the world takes one step closer to the edge. Chapter 6. The day the serpent rose. There comes a day in every tale when the skies split, the oceans boil, and the old truths die screaming. That day has a name, Ragnarok, the end of all things. But Ragnarok is not simply destruction. It is revelation. It is the moment when masks fall, illusions burn, and the shape of fate is laid bare like bone beneath flesh. And on that day, beneath the storm-black sky and over the trembling earth, Jörmungandr rose, not quietly, not slowly, but like a tidal wave breaking across time itself. It began with the breaking of the chains. In the deepest part of the sea, Jörmungandr stirred. The waves heaved, lightning cracked, and then, from the depths, came the first sign, a rumble that shattered coral and crushed whales like insects. The Midgard serpent had grown large enough to encircle the world, but now it had outgrown even that. The ocean could no longer hold it. With a scream like 1,000 typhoons, it burst forth, its coils unraveling like time itself being torn loose. Cities drowned, shores vanished, storms of venom swept across Midgard, and in the sky above the gods prepared. Odin gathered the Aesir. Frey rode out with a sword of flame. The Valkyries screamed across the wind. But Thor said nothing. He knew what was coming. He had always known. They met not in a temple, not in a forest, not even on a battlefield. They met at the edge of existence, where land met sea, where storm met silence, where the story ends. The ground cracked beneath them. Above, the sun had turned black, swallowed by Skjöll the wolf. The stars had fled. Time itself seemed to hold its breath. And there they stood, the thunder god and the world serpent, Thor and Jörmungandr, two destinies made flesh, the hammer and the coil, the breath of sky and the venom of void. They did not speak. What words could be spoken at the end of all things? Instead they charged. The serpent struck first, jaws wide, fangs gleaming, venom trailing like smoke. Thor met it with a leap, hammer raised, thunder cracking behind him. Mjolnir smashed against scale, and the shockwave split the sea. They battled across mountain peaks, across ruined cities, across the bones of giants. Each blow from Thor shook the heavens. Each strike from Jörmungandr poisoned the earth. Birds fell dead from the sky. Rivers turned black. The screams of men and gods alike were drowned beneath the roar of battle. Thor struck the beast again and again. Jörmungandr coiled tighter, faster, lifting its body in loops that blotted out the burning sky. No longer was it a serpent. It was a wall of fate, a living apocalypse. And then Thor found the mark. With a final roar, a cry that shattered the clouds, he struck. Mjolnir hit the serpent's skull with such force that time seemed to stop. The beast convulsed. Its roar turned to a gurgle. Venom spilled like rain from its mouth, and Jörmungandr fell. But victory comes with a cost. Thor stumbled back. He breathed once, twice, 9 steps. That was all. He took one more and fell. Not from wounds, not from fear, but from the venom. The same venom that had haunted the dreams of gods and burned the roots of Yggdrasil. Thor's chest rose, then fell. Then for nothing, the god of thunder lay still, and the world, broken, burning, watched as both god and serpent died. So ends the story of Jörmungandr, not in conquest, not in words, but in silence, in the stillness after the storm, in the final breath that follows the roar. The serpent did not win, nor did it lose. It fulfilled, it played its part, it brought the end, and in doing so, cleared the path for something new. Because that is the truth behind the terror of Ragnarok. It is not just an end, it is a reset, a washing clean, a silence before a new song begins. Some say that from the ashes of the battle, new gods will rise, that the earth will be green again, that the sea will calm, that a child of Thor will find the hammer in the grass and remember the stories. And perhaps, somewhere deep beneath the waves, something will stir once more. Not in rage, not in hate, but in the eternal rhythm of myth, because the serpent, like the sea, like the void, never truly dies. It only sleeps, waiting, watching, coiled around the world. Still, and so the story closes, not with a bang, but with a breath. The world serpent has fallen, the gods have burned, but from the ashes, a new tale begins, and so the world serpent falls, not in defeat, not in triumph, but in fulfillment. The final breath of a prophecy written in the bones of the cosmos. Jörmungandr was never meant to be stopped, only met. And Thor, the Thunderer, met him with fire, fury, and fate in hand. Yet even as the serpent's coils lie broken beneath the waves, its venom lingers in the hearts of men, in the winds of the north, in the silence that follows the storm. Because in Norse myth, there are no true endings, only cycles. And somewhere in the vast deep, the echo of the serpent still stirs. If this story gripped your soul, if the roar of ancient gods still rings in your ears, then like, comment, and share this legend with fellow seekers of myth and mystery. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so you never miss another tale from the edge of time. And here's something for the true myth hunters. Join our epic giveaway. One lucky subscriber will win a $100 Amazon gift card, and another will take home the brand new Samsung S25, the latest tech for those who look beyond the veil. To enter, like this video, comment your favorite Norse god or creature, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Winners will be announced in the next episode. So stay tuned and stay curious. Until next time, traveler of legends, keep your eyes on the sea and your heart open to the myth.